Hey there. So we have had quite a bonkers April for a whole variety of reasons, mostly because we had that insane Aries rich time where we had Mercury and Mars, Saturn and Neptune, the Sun, the Moon, and Chiron all in the sign of Aries, which was frankly really stirring and really intense for anyone's Aries in their birth chart. We've all got Aries in our birth chart somewhere. And according to what house it all sat in, that would have been a house that got really energized. For me, it was my sixth house. And boy, oh boy, did my daily life, which is ruled by the sixth house, get completely turned upside down from, one member of our family being out of the family home for well over a week. We all got ill on their return. We also had one of our cats hit by a car, and we were back and forth to the vets over a 2-week period. Lots of expense incurred. So it was quite disturbing. Like the normal pattern of our life was really turned upside down. And I wonder what it was like for you. I mean, what happened to you in your Aries house? And then, of course, we had Venus and Uranus come together in that lovely little sweetheart conjunction before both of them moving into the sign of Gemini, and then things have started ramping up. In fact, the week that happened, straight after, both my husband and I got lots of surprising invitations for a lot of extra work in different ways, really sort of allowing us to go, oh my God, things could really change quite quickly. And so, that whole episode of April has, I think, brought in some changes. It has for me, has for my husband, a lot of the people I talk to. But again, I'm wondering, how has it landed for you? So imagine my surprise when I was looking at the movements for this week ahead. This is a forecast taking you from Monday the 4th right the way through to Sunday the 10th. Now, normally when I'm looking at these, we've got a whole heap of things. I don't look at the moon to planet aspects unless it's the new moon or the full moon or an eclipse. I do track where the moon is in these forecasts, but mostly I'm looking at planet to planet, planet to node, because these are the moments where they come into an exact alignment when we're really feeling things in their utter potency. And it's really the internal architecture that we're always kind of working with. And so usually there's a lot more than this, and maybe a planet changing signs as well. But in this week ahead, it looks like it's quiet, fairly quiet. And so this to me just seems like a time where we can let it land. This is a time to kind of come back into our senses and say, okay, I've been through a lot. Now, what does that mean? How do we integrate all this energy? And so that's what I'm devoting this to. Now, whilst you can see where things integrate in our birth charts individually, I would always look at the cusp to your fourth house, the angle that has IC written on it. That's like the lowest point in our chart, and that's where everything comes to settle, like figuratively, it comes to settle. However, I don't know where your IC is, so how else could I find where things might come to settle, where things might slow down? I mean, sure, we could look at the house of Taurus, and right now the sun is in the sign of Taurus. But I was thinking, what? Settling and calming, it's such a sort of feminine energy. And when we look at the characters we have in our solar system, we've got the moon and Venus that are our feminines, but every other planet is masculine. And so this is where I was thinking, well, let's put in my feminine friends. And I put these into most charts, in fact, just not usually on these forecasts. So what I'm doing is I'm adding in dwarf planet Ceres. She's the, I think of her as a Mother Earth type. She is a goddess of nurturing, of caring, of loving for people and transforming the land. She helps us in her mythology. You can learn a lot about her and how she helps us to regulate our seasons, but also how, this too shall pass and something else will also come up. She's very cyclical, and, she gives us a natural intelligence. Then we've also got Pallas Athena. Now she's a goddess of calm, cool, feminine wisdom and strategy. She sees patterns, and, she helps us come into our own cool thinking, feminine, not hot-headed, not so much masculine. This is us coming into another space where we can slow down a little bit. Then we've also got Juno. Now, Juno, I love Juno. She really shows us, I mean, she's got a few different ways. I mean, there's a few different ways you can use Juno, and she does get a bad rep as the other woman sometimes, because she does also have a bit of, she's known for a bit of a sexual drive and appearing as somebody else in your chart. But I also think she really shows us what we're really committed to. And, you know, what we're emotionally committed to. I mean, Juno, also known as Hera, according to whether you're Roman or Greek, you know, she's a goddess of marriage. And so she really is talking about how we can get settled and committed in ourselves. And we've also got Vesta. Now, Vesta here is known as the goddess of the hearth. You know, she's warming us up. She shows us, in fact, let me bring up some information about them. You know, Vesta is helping us get into our inner alignment. And so I've brought these four in because they add a feminine perspective to what looks like an always very masculine chart. And I think they're going to help us to settle these energies and ground these energies. So we're coming into land. Ceres is showing us how we can find nourishment and receive goodness, which I think is really important. Pallas Athena is helping us to see where the new patterns are settling in our life. Juno is helping us to reorient our commitments to others. You know, some we absolutely want to go deeper on, but maybe there are some that it's actually time to drift away or actually really come apart formally. And then there's Vesta, and she's helping us to anchor into our own devotion and our devotion to God, or whatever we are devoted to. So this is really helping us to land everything, all the busyness that's happened. So in this forecast, what I'm going to do is talk about these three aspects which are shaping this chart for the week ahead. And then also a little word or two about each of these goddesses and what they're bringing to the table this week, how you can use it. And if you want to go a little bit further, you'll see that I've got a few moon comments. And actually, every day, Monday to Friday, I don't know why that one's emphasized, but Monday to Friday, I do a little short forecast within my free community on the school platform. That's skool.com/feelgoodastrology. And I record what the moon is actually reacting to. So here I give you the overview, and in my school community, I go much, much deeper. And so, yeah, if you want even more, go there, and you'll get a little safe dribble of information just coming in like a little bite-sized chunk. And like I said, I'm invoking or inviting these goddesses in. So yeah, and this week ahead, we've got Mars in a square to Jupiter. Now, I've actually got this in my birth chart, and it's an interesting aspect. You know, we've got Mars here in his own sign, in the sign of Aries. He's fired up, he's ready to go, he's very clear. And so Mars in Aries absolutely is hotter than usual. He knows what he wants and is feeling really driven to take action. And then we've also got Jupiter exalted in the sign of Cancer. And he's been there a while. He will be shifting in the next couple of months. But Jupiter in Cancer is, I think, kind of happily steady. Now, he might be a bit emotional. He might help us to feel into our sort of familial emotions quite a bit. It might bring up quite a bit of family stuff. You know, Jupiter expands, possibly also inflames where he is. And, you know, in the sign of Cancer, you know, it's our emotions, our commitments, our family in particular. They're really big themes, and our home. And of course, wherever Cancer is in your birth chart, Jupiter there will also be expanding on that theme. But, you know, Jupiter in Cancer, I think there's a lot of gratitude there. You know, there's this feeling of it's going to be okay. Let's feel good. Let's build on what we've already got. There's a lot of inbuilt inherent gratitude and appreciation. And I think, you know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. You know, Jupiter's natural faith absolutely brings about a good set of circumstances. He's really good at, you know, helping us feel grateful, uplifting our vibration. And then all of a sudden, our life starts to shift in alignment with the level of natural trust that we have in the world and the world around us and in ourselves and our own capabilities. Now, here we've got, Mars in Aries wanting to take action straight away. Boom, boom, boom. Like he's direct. He's not going to faff around with his language. He's going to go straight to the point. And then Jupiter is kind of resting, is magnificent, is feeling calm, is feeling a natural. He's not really got a problem to solve right now. Jupiter, I think, is kind of almost having a gap year. He feels good. He knows that life is good, and he doesn't want to trouble himself. And so I really see that there's an energetic mismatch here, as comes up with all the squares. And so Mars is frustrated with Jupiter. Jupiter's frustrated with Mars. Jupiter's saying, look, man, why do you want to change everything? Actually, if you feel into things, if you sit in the energy a bit and come into appreciation, you might actually realize there is nothing to solve. But Mars is full of hot air and is ready to move forwards. And in actual fact, no wonder Mars is feeling really kind of free and spontaneous in the sign of Aries. I think, when he went through Pisces, and Mars is a little bit, he kind of loses all his potency in the sign of in Pisces. And, we've had such a strong Piscean time, and the North Node is in Pisces still. It just feels like there's been a lot of energy that has been stodgy and not very clear. And that clarity is coming through now that Saturn and Neptune are in the sign of Aries. But I think Mars wants to really blast it forwards, really get everything really, really clear. And so I do see that there's a bit of a competing energy here. How I experience this in my own chart is, my Mars is in the sign of Sagittarius, absolutely wants to take action and spread information about things that help people come into their own truth and their own alignment. It's kind of what I do. And then Jupiter in Pisces for me absolutely wants to be sort of calm and comfortable and serene at home, and also go down the spiritual route. And so for me, the sort of battle is between Sagittarius and the Pisces. It's the truth versus the spirituality, and like which is going to win out. And so it is a little bit tense. Now also Jupiter, like I say, he expands everything that he's involved in. And so with Mars in a square to Jupiter, sometimes they can work together, but then Jupiter can make it go way too big too quickly. And that's another danger. Mars takes action, and then Jupiter says, hey, Mars, let me give you a hand. And that boom, everything just explodes and gets so much bigger. And so it's like, how do you get that balance right? It's not very balanced. Later on, we've got just the next day, the moon going into Capricorn. In fact, let me just go to Tuesday the 5th. So the moon heads into Capricorn. Mercury makes an exact square to Pluto. So Pluto's here at 5 degrees Aquarius, and Mercury will get to 5 degrees Taurus. Now, they're both in fixed signs. And so squares with fixed signs are just so much more sticky and rigid and tense. Pluto absolutely wants to be changing and transforming our ideas on the world systems, our ability to sense into the future. Pluto is wanting to pattern that, I would say. And then, Mercury in the sign of Taurus is actually wanting to be practical, but a lot more down to earth, a lot more in our own senses, solving problems for us, not the world. And so then there's this also like big tension between trying to put the world to rights versus the very practical realities that Mercury is currently immersed in. And so again, there's a fracture, there's a tension. How do we do that? It's difficult to land the energy, just like Mars square Jupiter, it's difficult to land. Mercury and Pluto, difficult to land. And, these are going to ease off as we go through the week. The Mercury one will ease off a bit quicker, though it's still going to be in a square even at the end of the week. And even though Mercury is zooming ahead, frankly, he's going to do the whole of Taurus in just, I think, 2.5 weeks, something like that, like not 3 or 4 weeks. He's really doing it fast. It might even be 2 weeks. And then we've got Mercury sextile the North Node. Now, here I think our thinking is on point. It feels like we know what we're talking about. We actually have a good sense that actually we need to care for ourselves. So I think Mercury's on the right track here. It's time to look after ourselves. And then, later on Friday, the 8th, the moon is coming in, making a conjunction with Pluto, and it feels like putting the worlds to rights once again just feels so important. And as we're coming into the 10th, as the moon goes into the sign of Pisces, there might be this sense of resignation, surrender, a sense of uncertainty, not being entirely sure where we're going, and maybe a checking in with the spirituality. So that on its own doesn't really give much information about this week ahead, other than there's a bit of confliction for us to work through. So this is where I want to talk now just about the goddesses and what they're bringing us. So like I said, Ceres is here to show us nourishment and receiving goodness. So she can help us land after this really busy month in April. And Ceres is in the sign of Taurus. Now, I would say Ceres is very happy in Taurus. She's all about growing things, harvest. She absolutely loves those things. I mean, I would say she's got more of an alliance with Virgo, a natural rulership with Virgo, but with Taurus, she absolutely gets that. So with Ceres, to me, this is about us nurturing our body, looking after ourselves, grounding, getting out, putting our feet on the ground if it's warm enough to do so, using really natural things to get us back into ourselves. So like, how can you source your food this week? Can you eat more natural things or raw things? Can you pick things from the garden, like from garden to table, would be really, really great. Can you go and support like local farmers and things like that? Anything that brings you back to the land, back into yourself and back into your body, I think would be really good. Like things like juices as well, like Taurus absolutely loves the senses. The sign of Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus absolutely is about relating to energies, and comfort is so important. So I really also, with Ceres in the sign of Taurus, I would say get back into natural sleeping patterns, waking with the sunshine or light. Some countries don't get sunshine so much, and going to bed, starting to wind down as the sky goes dark. Really get into the natural patterns will be absolutely helpful to help you land everything that has come up for you in this last month. And also put comfortable fibers on your skin, maybe wear things that are not synthetic, go into your natural cottons, your lovely wools, some lovely pashminas and things like that, or a lovely blanket. This is a time to absolutely go into comfort. So that's what I think Ceres is really bringing us. Now, if we look at Pallas Athena, she's a lot more cerebral. I mean, she's a very sort of mental goddess, and I don't mean mental as in crazy. She is fine in her mind and very objective. She's not going to get swayed by clever emotional arguments or anything like that. She's going to absolutely see the truth. And I think, right now you can see she's in the sign of Aries. I say you can see, you might not know the symbols. Ceres is here, she's got like a scythe to like cut the grain, when she's doing her harvests. Pallas Athena, she's like a diamond with a little body underneath. And she's all about patterns. I think of the diamond and I think it's a shape, it's a geometric shape. It is a pattern that can slot into place. And so she is seeing patterns about action. And so one thing you might ask yourself in this week ahead, if you've got time, is what has inspired action in the past? Where have I felt flooded with action? Where have I felt flooded with confidence? Where have I felt courage return? Where have I felt brave? Where have I felt like I could defend what's mine and stand strong? So I think she's helping you to see the patterns of courage, which is a Mars thing, and an Aries thing. That's the most important. I think she's helping you to see where you are so certain about something that you take action without asking for other people's advice or ideas. You just know it so clearly and so purely that you just take action. So this is about you coming into your own congruency, and your own kind of will, your own dominion. So, and she is a little bit warlike. I mean, she's more strategic in seeing where to put her energies. And so I think if you can look at the patterns of the past to do with Aries, it's going to give you a really good idea on what has worked for you and what hasn't. I mean, you might want to think in terms of what was going on, what people were involved, how were you feeling somatically within your body, what psychological shifts were you going through at these times. And so you'll start to code what courage feels like and what presupposes courage. I think that could be very useful. Now, we've also got Juno here. She looks like a chimney sweep brush, or like a pom-pom on a stick, or almost like a star that's kind of radiating out, so she is our goddess to do with commitment. And I think in the sign of Aquarius, she is also encouraging us to think in terms of our values, and maybe something a little bit more cerebral than heartfelt. She's in the sign of Aquarius, which absolutely wants to see things objectively, not subjectively, where we get really emotionally involved. So, Juno is quite detached right now, and that's quite helpful because, here, I think she's got a commitment to principles. I mean, the sign of Aquarius, like Aquarians, when I look deeply at Aquarians, and, I teach astrology on my school platform, and over the last 14 weeks I've been teaching each sign at a depth I didn't even know was possible. I really went deep with my group, and it was wonderful. And one of the things that really struck me about Aquarians, and like Aquarians are known for being a bit odd and a little bit different, going to the beat of their own drum. But one of the things when I looked underneath that, like what is fueling that, it's the fact that they actually see what's coming ahead of time before anyone else can comprehend that. And so they see what no one else can. And of course, then everyone else thinks they're hyper vigilant, a little bit manic, a little bit crazy, or just like really cuckoo. But they're not. They see something that we're not all ready to see, the sign of Aquarius. And we've all got Aquarius somewhere in our chart. Even if it doesn't have a planet in it, it's still in our birth chart. It still exists. And so we've all got a part of that where we just have this strong knowing. We see a pattern and we know it doesn't fit. It's not fitting quite right. It's a wrong pattern. We're going a wrong direction. And so here I think Juno is helping us to get very clear about what principles and values we're committing to. And that could absolutely extend into our relationships. If we realize that we're committed to certain principles and values, and it's not matched within our relationships, then there's going to be a decaying, things are going to break down a little bit, because relationships where there's not a sense of matched value systems struggle long term, because you're working at different paces, you're going in a different direction. It's sad, and it's really difficult. And I think if you've got very different values, you have to really organize your life and be very consciously aware of it. So this could bring up the consciousness that yes, we have different values and here's how we can make it work. Or you might think, do you know what, I'm ready to be in a relationship where I actually share values with somebody and see what happens. So to me, this is about commitment to our values and principles and what can evolve and flow from it. And it can be absolutely wonderful. And then the final one, Vesta. Vesta, she looks like a little V with smoke coming out of it. I always think of her as some kind of posh little, some kind of posh little coffee cup with steam coming from it. And she's about the hearth. So she's like a big fire. She's really helping us get absolutely warm and toasty in our alignment. And so Vesta, like the Vestal Virgins, they were like really well-known psychics that were kept separate from everyone so that their alignment didn't get influenced by the outside world. And Vesta shows us where we are really pure, absolutely pure and devoted. And here Vesta is in the sign of Pisces, right at the end of Pisces. And so she is asking us, what spiritual energy are we anchoring ourselves into? And so to me, this is a message that, once we know what our values and principles are, once we're clear about what our action is and what causes our action, and also once we've looked after ourselves for a good few days and we've wrapped up and we've eaten well and put our feet on the ground and stuff, cuddled someone, like cuddled our children, cuddled our pets, or even a stranger, who knows? Who knows how groovy you are? But Vesta shows us what we might do with it. And so this is, I think, a moment for us to go deep into ourselves. And maybe you could imagine like a candle, in your womb area, like a light, like a fire, even your own Vestal Virgin hearth in your own body, and just think about your own internal fire. This could be a moment where you breathe into that feeling of your purity. You can imagine the fire of Vesta kind of like burning up any impure thoughts, any impure energies within you. This is a time of an internal spiritual cleanse. And you might not want to use the energy of fire. That might not really do it for you. But because she is currently in the sign of Pisces, like a salt bath, a little bit of salt water, to me, salt and the ocean and the flowing water, the flowing tides, the moon, this could all absolutely tie into some kind of purification and feeling of deep, deep devotion. So there you go. They were my thoughts for this week ahead. A very different feel to usual, but I hope it helps you to come into land. And that's my utter devotion to what I'm doing here. Is, this channel is to help people come back to themselves. So wishing you a beautiful week ahead with a little bit more peace and quiet. Lots of love from me. And if you do want to go deeper and learn more about those moon movements as they happen on a daily basis, or even come and study with me, I finished with the signs now, though I am now looking on a house by house basis, deep diving into all the houses within our birth chart over a 12-week. It'll probably be extended to 14 because I'll put in a couple of extra bonus sessions. But if you want to be part of the classroom, then come and join me. So my school address is www.school, that's skool.com/feelgoodastrology. So be well and catch up with you real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now.